One of the first things I learned in my training to become a psychologist was the breakdown of the word therapist into the rapist, because a therapist literally has the kind of power to destroy your life, ruin you, descend you into madness, chaos, make things worse for you. If you have a bad therapist, please fire them. Hey, welcome to my channel. I am Dr. Sharice. I help Black men and women heal from trauma and toxic relationships. Today, we're going to be talking about 5 signs you have a bad therapist, right? Therapists are humans like everybody else, and there are some really, really good ones. Come on, you're looking at a really, really good one, okay? But there are some really bad therapists. That's why we have a licensing board who monitors what you're doing, who takes complaints to make sure that the public is safe, because we are getting into your minds. We can convince people to do certain things. There's just so much power in the relationship between a therapist and a client. And so please pay attention to these signs. If you have a bad therapist, I'm going to need you to fire them. One of the signs that your therapist is not that great is when you are talking about subjects, they're either judgmental or pushy. And you may notice this in particular with certain subjects, like if we're talking about drugs or sex or engaging in what some may consider immoral behavior like lying. They are not being an unbiased person like a therapist should be. In fact, they are putting their thoughts and feelings onto you, or they're condemning you for what you believe or what choices you made. They may even be using God against you, right? If you go to a counselor who's Christian and they view things in the Christian lens, and they think everyone should view things in the Christian lens, and so they're telling you here is what you should be doing, and sin and repent and all this stuff in a therapeutic setting, that may not be appropriate. And if you are feeling quite uncomfortable and unsafe in sharing your experience with your therapist, it's really not good for you. You would benefit most from a therapist who lets you get out what you need to get out, tell the whole story, as much of it as you need to, so that you can heal from it afterwards. Another sign is that your therapist is always late or frequently cancels sessions. May or may not be at the last minute, but worse if it's at the last minute. It's not uncommon for therapists to run late for sessions, right? But typically we're talking 2 minutes, 5 minutes. If a therapist is more than 15 minutes late to most of your sessions, poor time management. I don't know what they're doing in that time, but that really cuts into your time. They should just schedule the session for 2:15 instead of 2 o'clock if they're always gonna be running late. 45-minute sessions are a thing, so it's perfectly fine if you have 45-minute sessions. But if you're getting less than that, or less than whatever was the agreed upon amount, right? The 55-minute session is the most researched amount of time for a therapy session. So if you're not able to meet for the allotted time, or your therapist is canceling sessions and you were ready to discuss certain things, ready to make some progress, you're really doing yourself a disservice to continue seeing this person, because they're not showing up for you. And this is one of those life experiences where maybe you never thought you would have to do this with a therapist, because, hey, didn't you go to school for this? Shouldn't you know better? Yes. But therapists can only take you as far as they have gone, and some of them have not gone very far. The next sign I have is poor boundaries. And so there's a lot of things that can fall under this. Trying to be your friend. And in the world that I live in, where one of my goals is to be anti-capitalistic, I still have to exist in this world, but bucking the boundaries that have been set by middle-aged white men, I understand how a relationship with a therapist can evolve after a certain amount of healing work has been done, and that dual relationships can exist, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in the thick of things, after having cried your eyes out, your therapist is suggesting that you all go out for drinks. Inappropriate. Oh my God. Inappropriate, unethical. That should not be happening. Your therapist should not be trying to be friends with you, as you are the person that they are confiding all of this sensitive information to. And it's not like a therapeutic relationship is not like a friendship, okay? Because friends also share their experience. And so if your therapist is oversharing, you end up feeling like this therapy session is about them versus you. I would say, don't go back. Don't go back. You could bring this up to your therapist, but often the power dynamic that exists makes it difficult for you to bring things up with your therapist. So if you feel comfortable, I would say, yeah, go ahead and do it. Say, hey, I noticed that you've been sharing a lot of your experience here. Otherwise, I would say just move on. Find somebody else who's a better fit for you. So the extreme end of boundary violations is a therapist making sexual advances for you. You would be surprised at the number of complaints that the board gets every year for a therapist that has tried to have sex with or date their current client, right? We have, guidelines, ethical guidelines on, after a certain amount of time or years, 7 years, just depending, date your client. But early on in my training, the abundance mindset of it all, right? I didn't know that's what my professor was teaching at the time, but like, why this one person? Why this one person? You have to date this one person. Why? You can come up with all kinds of reasons, but the world is so abundant that of course you would find a partner that's great for you. Why does it have to be the person that came to you for help? That's weird. That's weird. That's very abuse of power. Like, why would you do that? This is a person that's come to you for help, not sex. They're not asking for dick or, okay? You need to leave them alone. You need to help them heal from whatever trauma they've experienced so that they can live a fruitful and joyful life. Not in bed with you. If your therapist is making advances, romantic advances, please report them. This is like the rapist. This is one of the most egregious things a therapist can do, trying to beg you. Oh my God, so bad. This next one is more in line with the firing of your therapist. Not necessarily a bad therapist, but definitely inappropriate. Giving you direct advice. Sort of like a Yanma Fix My life coaching. Therapy is not life coaching, right? In a lot of therapy, and I have a video on the difference between life coaching and therapy, you are talking about the emotional work that needs to be done to live a more fruitful life. Life coaching is more so about structuring your life in a certain way so that you can meet your goals. Therapy is intimate, it's deep. You can be terrorized by your therapist if you have the wrong one. Direct advice is not helpful. It's sort of why a lot of life coaches don't want to be therapists, because the kind of patience and non-judgmentalness that is necessary for helping guide someone through the process of things unfolding to them, gaining the insight so that a belief can be changed, right? Not just we're practicing or, we're pretending to do something, or I'm telling myself an affirmation even though I don't believe it, right? Eventually, with a good therapist, those things are going to stick. They're going to be things that you internalize. Direct advice directly conflicts with internalizing a belief. If your therapist is just telling you what to do and you're not coming about some of those decisions for yourself, it really fosters an environment for you to not make any real progress because you're just doing what you're being told. Yes, giving homework, giving some advice. I really caution against advice, but giving some psychoeducation, right? A therapist can tell you, the explanation of, if you made this decision, if you made this decision, if you made this decision, what do you think might happen? Versus doing all of that mental work for you and then just coming to the conclusion and telling you what to do. You need to be bought into the process of you growing and learning, and you get there by forming your own conclusions on things so that you can start doing things differently and better. And a therapist reflecting to you some of those ideas can create aha moments. But if the therapist gets in the way, blocks those aha moments from happening, you will not see a lot of progress. Another reason to fire a therapist is they do not consider your culture, if it's relevant, right? You may be seeing a white therapist who is helping you with your anxiety, and your family history or your culture is not very relevant at this time. Maybe you just want to figure out, like, how do I approach my boss? Can I get some feedback on that? Can I tell you how it went for me the last time I tried, and you can give me some techniques that I can practice? But if a lot of your anxiety is fueled by your mom, who's from a different generation, maybe from a different country, speaks a different language, has a different way of going about things, and that side is never explored, and your therapist acts like that's not important because all we need to do is focus on what's happening now with you and your boss. When you're like, a client might say, well, sometimes my boss makes me feel like I'm talking to my mom, and there's a specific history around the mother and the culture that isn't explored at all. I would say they are doing you a disservice. Race, culture, language, those things don't always apply. They always, in the background of your life, they always apply. But they don't always need to be brought to the forefront and be discussed. But if your therapist never, ever wants to broach the subject. Maybe you've tried to talk about the difficulties in communicating with your family, given that you moved to a different part of the world, or your values and standards have evolved since, where your family of origin is from. If they never consider those things as important, I think you won't see as much progress as you could. I think you could still see progress. I don't think you will see as much progress as you could and really get to the root of the difficulties, because that entire aspect of your life has not been examined. And then a couple overall signs that you don't trust them, you don't feel comfortable with them, you've been in therapy 3, 6 months, a year, and you are not seeing any progress. Maybe not they're a bad therapist, but they're not a good fit for you. Those are signs that you should fire your therapist. If you definitely have been working with someone for over a year and the goals that you set out at the beginning have not been brought forward, and you cannot really explain why haven't you met your goal? If you are invested in the process of doing the work, but you don't feel like you're getting the kind of feedback that you need, or you would consider your therapist to be a really good listener but doesn't really challenge you at all, maybe they're not a bad therapist, but the fit is probably not the best one for you. In that case, I would recommend that you seek another therapist so that you can really get serious about doing the work with somebody who's just as serious about helping gently push you along the way to challenge you to be better, greater, learn more, evolve more, do all the things. Let me know if you have any questions. Share this video with someone you think may have a bad therapist. Subscribe to my channel for more videos like this and more videos about self-help. And thank you for watching.